Whoa, talk about anger issues. Hello brothers and sisters, my name is Daidarius and welcome to the review of The Punisher. So The Punisher takes place, I don't know how long after Daredevil season 2, but you catch up with Frank Castle and he is on his mission to avenge his family. He's hunting down the last men attached to the murder of his wife and 2 kids. And that happens in, I believe, the first 5 minutes of the series. And then after that it cuts to, I believe, 3 or 4 months later. So you're kind of wondering, well, if this series is not going to be about him avenging his family, then what is it going to be about? Well, this is here where the series gets a bit convoluted. So what happens is that Frank gets contacted by a hacker known as Micro, and he apparently has some evidence against Frank as something he did back when he was overseas in Afghanistan. And that kicks off the story because that is apparently attached to the murder of his family. So now he is interested in finding Micro, find out what he knows, and then after that get after the people who remain, who are responsible for his family's murder. And that's basically the series. Now, what I liked about the series is also something that's gonna divide the fan base. You are not gonna see the Punisher that much. I will actually say you see the Punisher maybe 3 times, and one of them is in the opening. Now, the reason for that is that Netflix wanted to focus more on a personal story with Frank, and I embraced that with all my might because we don't really know who Frank is. Yeah, we kind of got a view into his backstory in Daredevil season 2 with the murder of his family and such, but who was he before that incident happened, and what was it that made him change to becoming the Punisher? Because as we find out, the Punisher actually kind of started before that incident. That was just the push to get him over the edge, but he actually kind of became the Punisher in Afghanistan, and what happened in there is extremely important. Now, this series has some strengths and weaknesses as everything else, but what I will say is that its strength is its plots and its action sequences, and of course Frank. These 3 things is exceptionally well done. They really make a good job at grounding Frank and actually make him a person, a human being, where you can see how he changed, but also more importantly, what is his focus, his angers, and what values does he still have, because he's basically just a terrorist. I know he does only kill bad people, but he is still a terrorist. He is still a murderer. As he said in Daredevil season 2, he believed he killed 37 people at that time, which the public knew of. So he is not a good person, but he does still have some heart, and that heart we often find in the few scenes that are with Karen Page. She comes back to revisit her role. That also bummed me out a little bit because, you know, there has been one common factor in all of the Marvel Netflix series. That is Night Nurse. Night Nurse isn't in here. Well, she doesn't have anything to do in here, but she isn't in here. Just saying. The action sequences is extremely brutal, and from the get-go they hammer in yet again that Frank is an efficient killer. He is a murderer. When he beats people down, he doesn't beat them down to knock them out. No, he makes sure you don't get back up. That means breaking your legs, shooting off your kneecaps, and just hammer your face in with a fucking mallet. That's what he does, and you see it, and you hear it, and you feel it, and it is awesome. And the plot is actually well executed for the most part. It does get a bit clunky in the first half of the season because they need to set up the second half of the season, but that does mean that the first half of the season does suffer. Don't get me wrong, there are still a lot of enjoyment in the first half of the season, but it's just it's a bit of a bumpy ride in that aspect. What I liked about the plot is that for the most part it isn't about Frank getting revenge. Yes, that is the end product of it, because this is tied into his family's murder, but it's also more of Frank himself and the loose ends that other people have with Frank. Frank didn't want anything to do with him. He was done, and now he struggles to find a reason to live. He spent all his energy to killing and punish these people, and now that he has reached his goal, what he's gonna do? Another aspect of the series that I really liked is the fact that it focuses a lot on PTSD. It is a heavy subject to talk about, but it is present here because not only does Frank suffer from it, but you see other soldiers suffer from it also, and it is integrated into the plot. There's actually a plot line specific about a person who has PTSD and is struggling extremely with it. And when you look at it, Frank's PTSD is the fact that he is the Punisher. He goes around and killing bad guys, even though that in this season he doesn't really kill that much of a bad guy as the Punisher. He only kills them as Frank Castle, but still he does kill people. Now, what I don't like about the season is, as I said before, the first half of the series is just not that smooth. First of all, you have all the things with Frank, which is well executed, so let's just say that. But then you have all the other plots. You have the organization that was after him, you have the FBI who is investigating him, and that just doesn't smooth into the storyline that well in the beginning. And when you take that and combine it with extremely poor written dialogue, not for Frank but for everyone else, it does become better throughout the season, but in the beginning it is cringe worthy. They just use it as an excuse to make easy exposition and make the characters be a little edgy, or they have a character. It's just poorly written, and it takes you out of the series. That's mixed in with it. The villain is just another forgettable villain. I mean, he doesn't even have that much of a motivation. He's just there to oppose Frank. However, the villain is not alone. It's not just one person. It is an organization. And there is people inside this organization who works a lot better as a villain and an opposing threat to Frank. When they are on screen, you enjoy them more. But, this might be a spoiler. Now, I'm not going to go into detail, but if you don't want to get spoiled this little thing, then jump to this timestamp in the video or go to the link in the description down below. However, I need to it's just this one thing. You know, often in movies or series, when you have a character who seems to be a good guy, but then it gets revealed they're actually on the enemy team, then suddenly their character makes a complete 180, and everything they do from that part on is to be a meaning, killing, murderous asshole, even though that before that time they weren't. And I know the fact that when they are in presence of the good guys, they need to act and behave normally. But you also have scenes where they are not present with the good guys, and you don't see them finding that much enjoyment in others' torment. But here you have it that once you find out that a person is bad, that person makes a complete 180, and suddenly they are extremely hurtful and vengeful and torture people and seems to actually like it and get off of it. And it's only redeemed in the last 2 episodes. So why? Okay, I'm done talking about that. So what I really liked about this story is that it doesn't pulls, it punches. It actually embraces the fact that Frank and the world he lives in and knows is extremely violent, but it's not violent in the same aspect as in the 80s slasher movies. It uses the violence and the gore, the little there are, extremely effectively to actually hammer in that this world that they know is a world full of hurt. And it really shows that the stakes for Frank is high, because he can actually die any moment. Yeah, of course he is the title character, so you kinda know he's not gonna die, at least until the end of the season. That doesn't change that you are sometimes worried about him, but moreover that you are worried for the people he cares about, because this is the Punisher. Everyone can get knocked off. I also like the fact that they actually make Frank a little bit more human in some situations. He's still, you know, the cold badass that we know, but throughout the season he does show his more human side, and he actually cracks a few jokes. Not that many, but a few. So all I can say is that it did bum me out a little bit that the Punisher wasn't that much in the season. This was only Frank Castle and his story. However, I do appreciate that they actually took the time to develop Frank Castle. I know some fans will also not like that choice. However, I enjoyed it and I appreciate the reason why they did it. And the action is excellent. The story is good, especially the further you get into the season. The first half, but the second half is extremely strong. Frank Castle himself is extremely entertaining and he makes it really easy to root for him. The pace for the most part is actually quite good. There are some scenes that drag out a little bit. You can just plug them out with actually nothing being lost. I also like the fact that it's self-contained. It has nothing to do with the rest of the Netflix Marvel series, even though that I pretty sure that he's gonna get back into those series. This is his story. It's about him and how to deal with not just PTSD and the loss of your dears, but also what are you gonna do once you have actually accomplished your goal that you pursued with every fiber of your being. What are you gonna do? And what is Frank gonna do? Is he gonna continue to live on? Is he gonna bite the bullet? So with all these pros and cons, even though there was not that many cons, I have no other choice than to say that The Punisher is worth watching and definitely worth buying on Blu-ray. So The Punisher, have you seen it? What do you think about it? Did you like the fact that it was more Frank Castle, the series, than The Punisher, or were you against it? Or what is your favorite Marvel Netflix series? Whatever you think, comment around and read your thoughts. And as always, until I see you in the next video, remember to stay awesome. Bye! I'm Frank Castle. It sounds like I have gravel in my mouth when I talk.